Hey, what's going on, everyone? It's your boy JL Special back with another video. And I was just wanting to get back into that conversation about the NX and the future and all of those great and wonderful things. I was just thinking to myself, what could possibly be a few different ideas perhaps Nintendo might try to explore, or maybe even some games that they haven't tried to release in the early days. So let's just jump straight into it. This is like completely off cuff too, so it might get pretty crazy. I think personally, based on, well, let's say the lack of success that the Wii U had, I think Nintendo are going to move away from the whole idea of having a control pad be the main. I don't want to use the word gimmick. The main kind of draw to the console, or at least this is what I think. So let me just set that straight. It's like a personal thing. I think this is what Nintendo should do and shouldn't do. I think they shouldn't use the Wii U as a template in any shape or form. So that doesn't necessarily mean getting rid of a tablet style control pad, but don't let that be the main draw for developers as well as consumers. Because as we saw early on in the Wii U's life, especially with games like Nintendo Land and things like that, there was a lot of innovative kind of implementations or implications used with the gamepad, and it kind of just showcased a lot of the great things that it was capable of doing. But then as time went on and the support left, less developers really used it. It just became a HUD really away from the screen, which I will admit was a very useful thing for games that are very cinematic, like Assassin's Creed and things like that. Being able to have just the entire HUD away from the screen, so you can just focus on everything being on screen at once, and it's a lot more atmospheric. I think that's a very advantageous thing that the Wii U introduced. But I think Nintendo need to kind of go back a bit. You could call it a step back, but I think for them it would be a step side steps instead of a step forward, because they've already conquered standard cool gaming control pad schematics already. So go back to that and use that as the base control pad. You can have, if it's to be believed, with this hybrid version of the console, you can have a control pad that has a screen, but it doesn't need to be fancy. So long as the resolution is crystal clear and it doesn't take away anything from the developers being able to just, have the games run well on both screens, whether that's simultaneously or one at a time, that's fine. Also, it needs to be, obviously, if it's a hybrid console, you're taking these games away, it needs to work well as a portable as well. So it doesn't necessarily need to be a touchscreen. I mean, it could be, and it probably would be if they did use one. Because why would you go back and not use touchscreen when everything's a touchscreen now? But I just think that in terms of price, it would be cheaper not to have a touchscreen. But that's my personal thing. I think also what they're doing with Breath of the Wild, with Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, is a really good idea. Having the Wii U version come as a swan song, and also as the Breath of Life for the NX as well. So it's like it's doing double time there. I think that Nintendo should do that with other games, but from different developers. So you don't. I'm not to say that you're going to rehash or you're going to be just having loads and loads of re-releases, but of key games over this generation that have been multi-platform. And I keep saying that, and I know it's like I'm ringing the same bell over and over and over again, but it's because that these games showcase what a console is capable of. If you have the game running at, for example, 1080p 60 frames per second, if you have a game like Witcher 3 or GTA 5, or, well, it's not completely multi-platform, but even, for example, something like Rise of the Tomb Raider, if you had games like that running at their highest level smoothly, you're underlining the power that this console is capable of, but you're also, which is the most key, showing you've got great developer third-party support, and you're also showing that these games are accommodating for audiences that Nintendo think they've lost, or people think they've, especially skeptical people think that Nintendo have lost. It's like I was speaking to a friend of mine the other day, and he said, "Oh, I told him a little bit about how Nintendo are moving past the Wii U, moving to another console. He's like, oh, they're just gonna do what they've done before and make it gimmicky and childish and stuff like that. See, I can't blame him, and I can't really argue with him much because he doesn't keep up with gaming as much as I do. So he doesn't actually know what Nintendo are actually working on or working with. He doesn't fully understand the situation. So I can't. First, I'd have to school him and tell him what's going on. Then I can tell him how Nintendo should work or how they should work on what they need to work on. And they are doing it already. We can see so many different evidences of Nintendo going through this kind of seismic change in terms of everything, not just games development, but just across the board. I mean, you just have to look at Pokemon Go, and that's just an example of what Nintendo are dealing with when they talk about wanting to get into the mobile gaming sphere. When they get serious, because I mean, you looked at Miitomo, they're going, well, it's alright, I guess. And Pokemon Go has just completely murdered the world, so obviously Nintendo know exactly what they're doing once they apply themselves. And if they apply themselves like that, and even when you see with E3, they're talking about with Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, that it's the most expensive game they've ever created. It's not hard to see why when you just see the scale of the Wii U build. So imagine the NX version. So if they're applying that same kind of idea, this whole idea that I think even a game like Splatoon kind of demonstrates the differences that they're beginning to make, letting the younger generation of Nintendo's developers kind of take the lead now. You have the old guard, you have the veterans overlooking and overwatching them, making sure that it's still Nintendo-esque. But don't be afraid to break off those shackles a little bit, change the game up a little bit, do things a little bit differently. I think that's exactly what Nintendo needs to do with their new IPs, old IPs, and most importantly, I think they need to bring back IPs that have been dormant for way too long, namely F-Zero, because Nintendo have such a diverse game library, but the only racing game they're really using is Mario Kart. I mean, there's no harm in that because Mario Kart sells like like hot bread. It's crazy, but I think just having Mario Kart is fine, but having two racing games isn't half bad either. I mean, you can demonstrate the power difference between the Wii U and the NX, and especially now people are getting really intricate with the whole 1080p 60 frames per second thing and 4K and all that kind of stuff. A lot of people are looking into that as the difference makers now. So if you have consoles that are capable of that power, first of all, that's what I think the NX should be. Have all of that future proof, and I've said it way before we even knew what the NX might be powered by or how powerful it might be. They need to future proof. So you have games that can run at that top level from day one. Then you have games come out on day one that demonstrate that. They need to watch what Xbox One and PS4 did and avoid that. Can't have it, and what the Wii U did. The entire generation that we're still in. It's still current gen. It's not next gen. It's current gen. It's not old gen either. But they need to avoid game drafts. If that means, and I mean working from now, because a lot of people are saying that the NX will have cartridge based system. That's fine. But if they can find a way to do some backwards compatible games of have like a Wii U showcase, they can call it that. And you have specific game titles from the Wii U game library that really, really, really just showcased great games. I'm thinking Xenoblade Chronicles, I'm thinking Smash Brothers, Bayonetta 1 and 2, I'm not gonna start listing, but those are just a few examples. You don't necessarily have to completely remaster them, but if you just have those as backwards compatible games, start that off. Then you have a few more virtual console games. You can release, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 from each generation. There will be no game draft straight off the bat. Then you have your new games now. So you have Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Don't have a Mario game out straight away, because I think that would put Zelda and Mario in contention, and you want them both to do well on their own, so you don't release those close together. But this is where I think you can bring back old IPs that people have forgotten about. This is the time to bring them back and be like, well, those have gone for a while, but now we're doing something new with those IPs that you might have remembered. Maybe you never knew about them, and you're introducing them to new audiences now. That, I think, is where Nintendo have really got a gold mine just sitting there. And I just think they just can take their time and mine it little bit, little bit. And I think they would be completely fine just like that. But I think that Nintendo shouldn't necessarily rest on their past. They should also look to their future. And Splatoon, like I said earlier, is a perfect example of what they can do when they try and make a new IP. It's really successful. I mean, just apply the same kind of principles that you use with your previous IPs, but then just create something new. So you can have. I think also Nintendo should try to apply themselves to different types of games. I mean, they're already doing it now with Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. They're kind of stepping into that open world kind of genre now, where you have huge open worlds where they're not rooms basically connected by pretty corridors that look like it's outside, but technically it's just like one map connected by corridors. That's not what Breath of the Wild is, and I think Nintendo can apply that to so many other games. Brand new IPs. They could do that with Fire Emblem if they wanted to. They could do that with. Let's just we'd be here all day if I started listing that. I just think Nintendo should do that. I think with the control pads, I think that Nintendo can have, maybe if they want to, have two different versions. So you have almost like how with the Wii U you have the gamepad, then you have the Pro controller. So you can have the fancy hybrid console control pad, which obviously allows you to take it away from the screen, the TV or whatever, and play the games. But then you also have, just when you want to just sit at your TV, have a standard control pad and just use it, and not one that's strange and not ergonomically friendly. Like I've mentioned already, the gamepad is a little bit like that. It's a great control pad in terms of what it's capable of doing, but it's not the most comfortable thing in the world to use. And also for specific genres like racing games or shooting games, which it's not great at all, to be honest. You need that trigger. You need the people like feeling the response. That's why I think everyone, and I'm one of those people, have to agree that Xbox completely murdered it with the Xbox One control pad, because it feels, and even the DualShock 4 too, when you use those triggers, you get that force feedback, especially from the Xbox One control pad, and it just feels so comfortable, and it feels very easy to just pick up and play. That's not necessarily the case with the Wii U control pad, and I think Nintendo can learn that lesson. Look at the control pads that they've made previously, like the N64 control pad and the GameCube control pad. In particular, I'd say the GameCube control pad, because it was actually really comfortable, I found anyway. And for games like Smash Brothers and stuff like that, it just made perfect sense. I think Nintendo can go back to looking at those kind of ideas. Nothing too outlandish, because I think the key with the Wii U, or the key to its lack of success, I would say, is the fact that it had too many things that were a little bit not that inviting. The gamepad is big. That's not inviting. The fact that people couldn't tell if it was a different control pad, console rather, that's not inviting. So Nintendo need to come out completely differently with the NX and be like, look, it's not the Wii U, it's not a Wii. Just to reaffirm that, because a lot of people don't seem to listen when Nintendo talk, which is funny. Nintendo say things in statements, and people just seem to let it fly straight over their heads and continue asking the same stupid questions. So Nintendo need to reaffirm that it's completely separate from the Wii. It's a serious gaming console, but obviously we'll have your Netflix and your Amazon Prime Video, and they can have all that other stuff too, I guess. That's fine. Originally, I thought that kind of thing was kind of useful. like being able to play Blu-rays, but who cares? Like, honestly, people just watch everything online now. So if they've got another browser like the Wii's browser, they're laughing because for me, out of all three of the browsers, I find the Wii's one is the most easy to use, and it's just really, really good. So I would say just have a great internet browser, and then you have your little apps in here and there. That's fine, that's cool and dandy, but you want to make sure that you have that console coming out of the gate where it's no games, no. You can obviously have your gimmick, but when I say no games, I mean obviously there's gonna be games. I mean, but they're not playing about like this is a serious thing. You get me? Like, man, better be taken seriously, or that's what Nintendo need to be like. No, you can have your kiddie stuff, that's fine, but you don't let that be at the very top, the apex of what you're trying to display. And I think finally, one thing I think they absolutely so importantly now in this day and age need to do, which they just seem to blindly not recognize with the Wii U, the console has to have loads of storage. Whether they're not using this or whether they are, that doesn't even matter. Games are just so big now. And not only that, people are holding so much other things on there. Consoles now, like, you have obviously apps and all that kind of stuff. You need space. 1 terabyte has to be like the minimum. Forget 500 gigs. Maybe 750 could be the minimum, but you need to have at least a terabyte to be comfortable, I think. So I think that's more or less what I wanted to say. Just a few different up in the air ideas considering NX's potential and other things I think Nintendo should avoid. Yeah, I just want to hit up with a little something like that. I might do another video like this soon, so watch out for that. But in the meantime, man, you know what to do with these videos, man. Hit me up in that comment section. Let me know what you think Nintendo's plans are, what you think they should do, what you think they shouldn't do with the NX, whether you think it's a hybrid, whether you think it's going to be more grounded than that. Let me know in the comments, man. Share, like and subscribe, because man needs those subscribers, players. And I'll catch you on the next one, man. It's your boy Jasper saying, player up.